Good morning and welcome to this second Report Pro webinar, where we are going to take a deeper dive into Report Pro. I'm going to waffle a little bit for 30 seconds because I'm conscious that we have quite a lot of people subscribed to this morning's webinar, and I can see a number of people still queuing to get into this webinar. So a little bit about myself. So my name's Nicky Wilkins. I head up the customer engagement team. I think Ken will be moving the slide on shortly so that you can see my details. If you don't deal with me, you might deal with a couple of other members from the engagement team. So that might either be James Wright-Smith or it might be Sarah Parslow. The customer engagement team is there to help you get the most from bluQube, and that involves looking at ways that you use the software. It also looks at the other services, consultancy products, and new products like Report Pro that we have available. So Report Pro is a purchasable new tool to add on to the bluQube suite. It's not a replacement for Discoverer. I'll explain more about that when we get into why we have looked at Excel as an add-in. And it will be available from 4.7 for customers to consider purchasing. I'm very pleased to announce that two of our reference site partners, so those are customers that we work more closely with, in terms of developing new products. Part of being a reference site customer is that you have access to software on a pre-release basis, so before it's actually been released and productized fully to our customers. So West College Scotland and Glendower University have already purchased Report Pro and will be looking at implementing and installing it over the next few weeks, which is really exciting for us and hopefully for them too. And again, we'll talk a bit more about what that implementation looks like this morning. So Ken, do you want to say a quick hello? We're very lucky to have you with us, and you've worked on developing this tool over the last few months, haven't you?
Indeed. Good morning, all. A lot of the strange times over the last few months have been working on this product with the development team. And it seems strange after all this time with using Discoverer and working hard to stretch its formatting capability that we're now on a completely different approach. We're now operating in the relative freedom of Excel, and that's very exciting.
Thank you very much, Ken. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover this morning. So we'll talk, as I say, a bit about why we've chosen to use an Excel add-in for this tool, and I'll go into a bit more detail on that. We'll look at the pre-built report. So if you do purchase Report Pro, it will be shipped to you with a set of reports straight out of the box that you can use, and we'll explain more on that. We'll talk through how Report Pro can help you with consolidated reports, and then something that actually came out of questions from our first webinar in August when we launched this tool, around how we can make use of the user parameters through bluQube in sharing reports, and Ken will go into some more detail on that. As for some of the other webinars that we've done, I will be happy to take questions during the webinar. There's a little speech bubble, usually the top right hand side of the screen when you're in GoToMeeting. If you hover over that, there's a chat function. I'll just drop a little question. If you have any questions in there that you would like to ask, simply ask a question here. So I'll just test that to say, how's the weather? And hopefully you'll see that coming through. I'll keep an eye on this going through the webinar. So if you have questions, please pop them there. Be aware, everybody else can see them too. So do think about how you phrase your questions. We haven't had any problems with that up until now, but it's always worth pointing out. And yeah, if you want to ask questions during the webinar, I'll happily pick them up. Alternatively, at the end of the webinar, we will put up an email address for you to contact us, and you can always go into more detail offline. So enough of the admin, enough of the waffle. I think everybody has joined and come through now. If you are joining, please do just pop your microphone on mute as you get settled into the webinar. Other than you, Ken, obviously. Thank you. Right, let's move on to the first section. So why did we choose to use an Excel add-in for this new Reporting Pro tool? Well, as I say, this is not a replacement for Discoverer. Some of you will be aware that Discoverer or Reporter, which is the native business intelligence tool, so bluQube, is coming to the end of its life. It uses an Oracle tool, which is called Discoverer, and that's something that Oracle are beginning to wind down. Our response to that within the bluQube suite is to develop more reporting grids and more reporting standards within bluQube 4 itself. So when you're in bluQube 4, you may be aware that there is an entire section called Report, and within that section you have standard reports and you have reporting grids, and that's providing customers with the kind of reporting data tables that they would have used within Discoverer. And we will be expanding that over coming releases so that you can stop using Discoverer and you'll be able to refresh balance tables and get data extracts. So setting that to one side, why then would you use Report Pro? Well, this is actually responding and acknowledging the feedback that we're getting from customers, where we're looking at how people do reporting. And what's happened over the last 10, 15 years is a move away from the types of third-party business intelligence tools like Crystal Reporting, Jet, Discoverer, and where that was a sort of specialist knowledge that people held within a finance team. What's happened now is Excel has simply become the common standard. And in most cases, we talk to finance teams, we talk to management accountants, we talk to finance managers who say, I simply want to extract information to Excel and work on it, filter it, format it there. So Report Pro is giving you all of the great user interface and the ability to use a tool that you already are familiar with in Excel. And it's streamlining the process that takes you from data sitting within the bluQube database to fully fledged reports that are sitting within Excel. And along the way, because of how it's built as an Excel add-in, it still gives you all of the great functionality that bluQube has in terms of reporting structures, user parameters, account sets. It gives you all of the high security that you have through bluQube in terms of logging in and multi-factor authentication, and it reduces the steps needed from, as I say, a database table through to a final report. So I hope that's clear. Again, if you have any questions on that, or you want to understand a bit more of the process in terms of extracting data, very happy to cover that in a demonstration offline, or if you look at our first webinar, we go into that in a bit more detail. But with that in mind, we're going to move on now to the next section in this deeper dive into Report Pro. So we're going to look at the pre-built reports. We showed these very lightly in our first webinar, and Ken's now going to explain a little more about what you get straight out of the box and what that will enable you to do. Over to you, Ken.
With Report Pro, then, we've got data sources. We're calling them topics, which will provide profit and loss data, balance sheet data, both of those driven by sort of the period end we're looking at, and fed with reporting structures as well. And there's quite an extensive transaction one as well. And there are others, and we'll see the entire list of those when I log in a moment. But the basic premise is that with all of those, there are pivot tables already in those in the workbooks linked to a data sheet, and they can be modified to suit and saved just like any other Excel spreadsheet. If I actually open a P&L now, let's just find it. So we've got a data sheet, which is pulls the data in from bluQube, and that's done with this app with login here, username, password, login, and see a list of business areas, or as we call them, topic. That's the wrong password. So the range of topics available: profit and loss, balance sheet, document details, which is the transaction, the basic transaction dump, although we're pulling here, not so much dumping. Supplier and customer details, purchase order details, summary documents, which gives is a good source for debtors, like IM summary docs for those discoverer funds, and budget balances, the budget account inquiry screen, and finally a multi-year profit and loss one. This particular sheet is for P&L data, and there are 3 different topics. So this one is going to come out as part of the sale. You'd have a reporting structure, a driving P&L. I've got 3 different levels. That's just with the very high parents, the next level of parents down, and finally one with nominals in there, all driven from the data sheet. Very quick look at others then. I've got these ready-made and open this time to save a flat like a moment ago. So there's a balance sheet one. Obviously, you can dive down through different levels of the balance sheet to the nominals at the bottom. And then finally, let's have a little look at the document details, for example. This is quite an interesting illustration of the fact that, okay, we've got a data sheet here with all of those fields in. And then the first pivot table is one, it's very simple, it's a pivot table, but that's just including some fields: the nominal, the cost center, our external reference, supplier reference, and so on, and the amounts. And as you can see on the right-hand side in the pivot table field drop down, there are very few ticks. That just represents the fields that are available, and the ticked ones are the ones I've pulled into the report. So this isn't magic, but it just illustrates the depth of that document details. All the available fields which would have been there in the product are pulled through here. I think that'll do, Nicky.
That's lovely, Ken. Yeah, thank you very much. And as you have beautifully illustrated there, that's the starting point. We're seeing these pre-built reports as a springboard in many respects, so that when you get this bright shiny new tool and you want to start getting stuck into shaping, configuring, formatting your own reports, these pre-built reports, as Ken's just shown you, already linked to a data sheet, already built with the pivot tables there, making use of, where necessary, the different levels of reporting structures. They are going to enable you to then toggle in or out different additional data fields that you wish, and then start formatting, start introducing other elements to that report that you want to include, whether that's calculations, whether that's additional commentary fields. All of that is just straight away ready for you to get stuck into. So hopefully you can see that day one, Report Pro is going to get you to the place where you want to be. In addition to that, it's worth explaining that part of the services package that we will deliver to customers that purchase Report Pro will include looking at some of the reports that you're already using, whether that's flat data extracts or simply management reports that you've built up sitting in Excel, and we'll consider whether there's ways that we can create data sheets that support those Excel spreadsheets that you've already spent time on. So there's a lot that we can do to help you get the most from this tool. Again, if you have questions on that, feel free to either pop a question through on chat now, and I'll try and answer as best I can, or I'm very happy to talk offline after this webinar and go into more detail about your specific needs. Right, let's move on to the next section, please, Ken. So we've talked about pre-built reports. We're now going to look at consolidated reports. Ken's going to give you some understanding of how much easier creating consolidated reports will be by using the Report Pro tool.
So the reports that I put up earlier on just happened to be, and that probably are most commonly going to be, pulling report data from one operating entity at a time. But that doesn't mean you can't have a pivot table with more than one data source. All of this is driven by reporting structures. So if you've got the same reporting structure in all the operating entities that you wanted to consolidate, provided the reporting structure joins together the intercompany sales and purchases and the intercompany assets and liabilities accounts, then the pivot table will naturally just eliminate those as we produce a pivot table from multiple operating entities where the sales cancel out the purchases and so on. It's like in, that's just eliminations. So that's consolidated reporting with elimination and for both the balance sheet and profit and loss. Now I'm going to try and show that consolidated one. There we go. This is a similar setup to last time in principle, but I've got two data sheets, and then I'm not logging into these sheets with Report Pro and pulling data into them. They are pulling data from individual company workbooks, which are the data sources in those two sheets, company one, company two. I've got a single company P&L then on just using the pivot table on one of these two sheets. But the technique for consolidating is to have an appended data sheet here, which pulls data from these two sheets, and just instead of they've got 23,000 rows, is it? And something like 12,000 rows in each of these two, all blended together here, and then one almighty pivot table on here, which is the consolidation, where we've got company one, company two, and the consolidated result over there on the right. We've still got the full variety of fields available in the pivot table to be able to do it at whichever level we like. This has gone down quite low level.
Thank you. And if you are sat looking at that and thinking, yes, that's going to make a big difference to me, because multiple entity reporting is something you look at, then it might be worth me just throwing in, we also have a tool that helps you with the processing of transactions between entities, called intercompany transactions. That assists with automatically processing either recharges between entities or shared transactions between intercompanies, and can make a massive difference for organizations where you've got different entities transacting with each other. And a couple of our customers are already using that. If that's something you're unaware of, as I say, we launched a webinar on that last month. Very happy to talk about that in more detail, in amongst thinking about how we do consolidated reporting. And a further footnote, just while we're looking at that, Ken, is you've used that mechanism there of multiple data sources feeding into a consolidated pivot table to show multiple entities. But actually, you could take this one step further, couldn't you, in thinking about additional data sources, whether that's from a third-party software application, or whether that's just a flat download of data sitting in this Excel workbook. We know there have been questions and requirements where organizations want to combine data, and this is going to enable them to do that.
Yeah, the secret with these this consolidation is obviously that the structural data above it is the reporting structures from bluQube. But if you've got two data sources, it is possible within the Excel environment. I can't say I'm an expert with this bit, but you can, with the data sources, join two data sources so that you could report something like student numbers and P&L activity on cost center by cost center by joining two entirely different data sources. So one might be bluQube stuff, one might be from another company, from another product, another database entirely, and we bring them together and you can bring them together in Excel by joining the data sources. Heady stuff, but that is the top of the tree.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Ken. Worth making that additional point. So let's move on to the last section. I've had a couple of sort of questions just in private coming through to me. If you have any questions, please do use the chat function. You can either send me a private message or just an open question. Very happy to answer these queries as they're coming through. Report sharing then. As I said, this was something that actually came out of questions from the first webinar, wasn't it? When we were looking at how can users that have a restricted account set or restricted access class help themselves, serve themselves by using this tool. Ken, do you want to illustrate that in a bit more detail, please?
Sure. Let's go through. So the point here is that when a budget holder logs into the Report Pro app, and I'm going to do that in a moment, keep talking about it and haven't shown it, but it's with the principle is implied by looking at the workbooks. When you log into Report Pro, it's using the same access classes and account sets that drive the access security when you're logged into bluQube. So it would be possible to send a single workbook to all users, perhaps a completely blank one, and get them to log in, and it will repopulate the report with their data, as driven by the account sets and access classes. If account sets and access classes drive it, you'll only see the stuff which is within your account sets. And the other approach to sending reports out would be to send out a ready populated workbook with the data in it. That's the sort of thing I've been opening up to make it easy to demo, but you could be sending out the workbooks like that. There's a P&L which is full data. So we've got this individual can see these groups of cost centers. This is not a cost center level, but it's groups of cost center, the major groupings, because they have full access to the system through their account sets and access classes. They see all cost centers within the database. If I open up another workbook here, waiting for that to come in, there it is. That's a data sheet, no data at the moment. So this has been distributed without any data in the data sheet. And the pivot tables that are joined, I've just got those same three, but you might just have one. All three P&Ls have no data in. If I open the add-in and log in, and this is the full range of the topics again, I'm going to choose the profit and loss, where finance have put me a parameter set already, which defines the reporting structures to use, the operating entity, the reporting structures to use, and the month end. So signs set so that income will be positive and expenditure negative. I'm going to click on generate there, which is now going to, because this sheet is now logged into bluQube, it's going to pull data into the data sheet. And that's pulled in a few thousand rows. And if I just refresh the data sheet now, that will refresh all of the sheets. Now, if we look on the drop-down list in this one, it's just the one group of cost centers. So that is, believe me, an illustration of the account sets in operation. Only those which the user logged in at the moment is able to see, and are going to be pulled down into the reports. So there's the two ways of distributing information. Distribute a blank one, get people to log in, or don't even trouble people with the Report Pro app at all. Just distribute it with their data already in the data sheet. And then they can roam around the tables to look at their individual cost centers or whatever, whichever way you wish to structure.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Ken. Hopefully that is starting to fire some ideas amongst our audience this morning. And again, you've got questions or thoughts on that, I suspect that certainly will create some thoughts on how you're already working with your budget holders and how you're sharing information, how Report Pro can certainly, as Ken's just illustrated there, in one way, dramatically streamline how the data is shared to those budget holders. There are other routes, as Ken is hinting at. You know, you can go down this road in terms of actually getting people to log in and help themselves, or simply you can cut that data very clearly out of from Report Pro and share the cut data already pre-populated. We will be happy to go into more detail in a demonstration if you want to contact us after the webinar. So let's just look at the next slide in terms of what we've covered in summary. So we've given you an understanding of why we are using Excel, and as I've said, it's very much been a response to really useful feedback we've had from customers, and I think Excel add-ins in this way are going to become the future for how finance systems work with getting information into a tool which everybody knows how to use. We've given you examples of the suite of reports that you would be given as part of the Report Pro package if you decide to purchase the tool. We've started to show you some of the great features in terms of consolidating information, consolidating multiple entity reports, and we've shown you one example of how you might want to share information and how users that have limited account sets, limited access, could log into this tool and help themselves and start seeing information that's relevant to them. So where to from here? So next slide, we will be sending you a copy of this webinar out later in the week. If you want to contact me directly, I am a resource as well. So I'm happy, as I say, to talk about more detailed demonstrations, happy to give you an understanding of the packages that are available for Report Pro. We've got our standard pricing now in place. We also have some what we're calling pre-order offers. So if you do want to think about Report Pro before it's released in 4.7, which will be later in November, then really happy to talk to you now. Either drop me a line, nicky.wilkins@bluQube.co.uk, or email the general inbox, which is hello@bluQube.co.uk, and either myself or somebody from the customer engagement team will be happy to come back to you. For now, let me say thank you very much for joining us. I hope you found this useful, and I'm sure we'll speak soon. Have a great day. Bye.